The Hells Angels biker saw the little girl bound in a storage closet and his strike cut through the city's darkness. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. The rain pounded down in relentless sheets, the cold wind sweeping through the empty streets of the city. The streets, usually bustling with life, were eerily quiet tonight. But for Jake Reaper Morrison, a Hells Angels biker with a past as dark as the night, the silence was nothing new. He had learned to embrace it long ago. His Harley-Davidson roared through the wet streets, the sound of its engine cutting through the darkness like a knife. He had no destination in mind, just the open road, a chance to forget the demons that chased him. But as he turned onto a narrow alley, the faint sound of muffled cries reached his ears. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but then he heard it again, a desperate, frantic cry. His instincts kicked in immediately. He slammed the brakes, the bike screeching to a halt. He dismounted quickly, scanning the alley. The sound was coming from a nearby storage unit. Without thinking, he rushed toward it, his boots splashing through puddles. The closer he got, the more clearly he heard the sobs, the cries of someone in pain. He approached the door and tried the handle. It was locked. A surge of anger shot through him. This wasn't just some random incident. Someone was in trouble, and Jake wasn't going to walk away from it. He took a step back and kicked the door with all his strength. The wood splintered under the impact, and the door swung open. Inside, the dim light revealed a small, trembling girl, bound by thick ropes, her eyes wide with fear. She couldn't have been older than 10. Her clothes were torn, and her face was streaked with tears. Jake's heart sank. He had seen his fair share of violence, but something about this hit him harder than anything before. He kneeled down beside her, trying to make his voice as calm as possible. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. You're safe now." The girl looked at him, her eyes full of distrust, but also a flicker of hope. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Name's Jake. I'm here to help you, all right." He gently reached out to untie the ropes, binding her hands. The girl flinched, still unsure of him, but Jake's presence seemed to offer a small bit of comfort. As he worked quickly to free her, he noticed the deep bruises on her arms, the marks of someone who had been hurt far too many times. He clenched his fists, feeling the rage build inside him. Whoever had done this was going to pay. With one final tug, the ropes fell away, and the girl was free. She rubbed her wrists, looking up at him with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake's jaw tightened. "You don't need to thank me, but we need to get you out of here." He gently helped her to her feet, making sure she could stand on her own before turning toward the exit. The storm raged on outside, but for the first time that night, Jake felt like he was doing something right. He was going to get this girl to safety. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. I watched as the little girl's legs wobbled beneath her, her face still pale from the fear and pain she had endured. We were just a few steps out of the storage closet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't safe yet. The storm had been relentless outside, but something about the air felt heavier now. I glanced back at the broken door. The sound of the rain was the only thing that filled the silence, but it wasn't enough to mask the feeling that we were being watched. "Are you okay?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She nodded, but her eyes told a different story. She was scared, and rightfully so. I wasn't much better myself. I wasn't used to this, being someone's protector. I had always been the one to take care of myself, to look after my brothers in the club. But this was different. I was no stranger to violence, but seeing a little girl like this, it tore something inside me. "Do you know who did this to you?" I asked her as I gently placed my hand on her back, guiding her forward. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "I don't know. They just took me," she whispered. "I don't remember how I got here." Her voice was weak, and I could tell that the trauma was still fresh in her mind. I felt a surge of anger that I had trouble containing. The city I knew was full of criminals, but to hurt an innocent child? That crossed a line that could never be forgiven. I had to find out who was behind this and make sure they never hurt anyone again. But first, I had to get her somewhere safe. We had made it down the alley, but I didn't trust that we wouldn't be followed. I could already hear the faint rumble of a car engine in the distance, the tires skidding on the wet pavement. "Come on," I said, urging her to pick up the pace. "We need to get to my bike." I glanced around, my senses heightened. Every shadow, every passing car, made me feel like we were being hunted. As we neared the street, I heard the sound of footsteps behind us, getting closer. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a random encounter. Someone was looking for her, and they had no intention of letting her go. I looked down at the girl again. She was struggling to keep up, but she was trying. "Stay close to me," I told her, and she nodded. The footsteps grew louder, and I knew we didn't have much time. I grabbed her hand and pulled her closer to me, my grip tight, but reassuring. As we reached the corner of the street, I spotted my Harley just a few feet away. The engine was cold, but it was the only thing I had that could get us out of here. I didn't waste any time. I helped her onto the back of the bike and climbed on in front of her. "Hold on tight," I said, revving the engine. The roar of the Harley cut through the storm, and I sped down the street, my eyes constantly scanning the rearview mirror. I didn't know who was following us, but I knew they were close. My heart was pounding, and it wasn't just from the speed of the ride. Every instinct in me told me that we were not out of danger yet. The girl clung to me, her arms wrapped tightly around my waist, her body shaking against my back. I could feel her fear, and it made my own pulse race faster. As we sped through the rain-soaked streets, I couldn't help but think about everything that had led to this moment. I had never wanted to be anyone's hero. I wasn't the guy who swooped in to save the day. But now, for some reason, I couldn't walk away. I couldn't leave her to fend for herself. We reached my garage a few minutes later. I slammed the bike to a stop in front of the door, quickly dismounting. I could feel the tension in my body, the adrenaline still surging through my veins. I didn't even wait for her to get off before I opened the garage door and motioned for her to follow me inside. The warmth of the place was a sharp contrast to the cold, rainy night outside. I could hear the sound of her shuffling behind me, and I glanced back to make sure she was okay. She was still quiet, her face buried in the back of my jacket. I couldn't imagine the kind of fear she must have felt. I didn't want to ask her too many questions yet. She had already been through too much. As I turned on the light, the dim glow illuminated the space around us. Tools, old bike parts, and a couple of unfinished projects scattered across the room. I motioned to the old couch in the corner. "You can rest here for now. I'll get you some water." I moved toward the small fridge, but my mind was racing. I needed to make a plan. I had to figure out who was behind this and how to keep her safe. But for now, she needed comfort. She needed to feel safe again. I returned with the water, setting it down on the small table in front of her. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered again. I nodded, trying to push the guilt away. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let anyone hurt her again. I could feel the weight of that promise in my chest. I wasn't about to fail her. I stood there for a moment, watching the little girl sip her water, her hands shaking as she brought the glass to her lips. The garage was quiet now, the storm outside still raging, but inside, the noise of the world seemed distant, muffled. I wanted to give her some time to breathe, to process everything that had happened, but I could feel the tension building inside me. I couldn't just sit here, not knowing who was after her, not knowing who had done this to her. I had to act. I needed to find out who was behind this, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. She finished the water and set the glass down on the table. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft. I nodded, trying to hide the worry creeping into my mind. "You don't need to thank me. We're going to figure this out." She didn't say anything, but I could see the hesitation in her eyes. I knew she wanted to ask questions, but maybe she was too scared. She was just a kid. I couldn't imagine what she had been through. I walked over to the workbench, my hands running over the old tools and bike parts, trying to focus. I needed a plan, and the only thing I knew for sure was that I wasn't going to let this go. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, checking the screen. It was an unknown number. I didn't answer right away, but I knew it had to be important. Someone was looking for her, and it was only a matter of time before they came for her again. I answered the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah." A voice on the other end was smooth, almost too calm. "You have something that belongs to us." My stomach sank. I could feel the weight of their words, the threat hanging in the air. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice sharp. The voice chuckled, low and menacing. "We know where you are. We'll be there soon." The line went dead. I stood there for a moment, letting the words sink in. Whoever they were, they knew I had the girl, and they weren't wasting any time. I looked over at her, sitting quietly on the couch, her eyes wide, still processing everything. She didn't deserve any of this. She deserved a life free from fear. I couldn't let anyone hurt her again. "We need to go," I said, walking over to her. She looked up at me, her face pale. "Go where?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We need to get you somewhere safe," I replied, my hand reaching out to help her up. She stood slowly, still unsure of everything, but trusting me nonetheless. I wasn't sure if I was the one who should be trusted, but I had no choice now. There was no turning back. I grabbed my jacket, throwing it over my shoulders. "Stay close to me, all right?" I said, my voice firm. She nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I didn't blame her. She had been through too much already. I didn't know where we were going or how we would get there, but I had to make sure we stayed ahead of whoever was hunting us. I grabbed my keys, heading out the door and into the cold night. The rain had let up a little, but the streets were still slick, reflecting the lights of the city. I could hear the faint hum of an engine in the distance, getting closer. My gut twisted. They were here. We had to move fast. I walked to my bike, helping her onto the back. "Hold on tight," I said, starting the engine. The rumble of the Harley shook the ground beneath us as I sped off, weaving through the streets, my eyes scanning the rearview mirror for any signs of danger. I didn't know who they were, but I could feel their presence. They were close, and they weren't going to let us go without a fight. The girl's arms were wrapped tightly around my waist, her small frame pressed against my back. I could feel her shivering, but she didn't make a sound. I pushed the bike harder, trying to lose them in the twists and turns of the city. Every shadow, every flicker of movement made my heart race faster. I couldn't afford to slip up. This was no longer just a random encounter. Whoever was chasing us was dangerous, and they weren't going to stop until they had her. The streets blurred around us, the cold air rushing past, but all I could focus on was getting us out of here. I turned down an alley, hoping the narrow path would hide us, but the headlights of a car appeared behind us, gaining on us fast. I cursed under my breath. "We're not losing them this way," I muttered to myself. I needed a new plan, but I had no idea what it was yet. We needed to get off the main roads. I took a sharp left, heading toward the outskirts of the city, where the roads were less populated. If we could just get to the edge, I could figure out what to do next. But the car was still behind us, still gaining. I could hear the roar of the engine, a reminder that we weren't alone in this chase. As we turned another corner, I saw an abandoned warehouse up ahead. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance I had. I gunned the engine, heading toward the warehouse at full speed. The tires screeched as we made the turn, and I pulled up to the front door. I didn't waste any time, jumping off the bike and pulling her with me. "Stay close," I said again, my hand on her arm. I didn't know if this was the right move, but I wasn't going to risk her life any longer. We ran into the darkness of the warehouse, the sound of the engine roaring behind us. I could hear footsteps, voices calling out, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. Not yet. I could hear the sound of footsteps growing louder outside the warehouse. My pulse raced as I glanced at the girl, her wide eyes filled with fear. We were running out of time, and I didn't know how much longer we could hide. I motioned for her to stay low as I moved toward a stack of old crates in the corner of the warehouse. The dim light from the streetlights outside filtered through the cracked windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I had to stay calm. I had to think. I wasn't about to let them take her. I crouched down behind the crates, pulling the girl down beside me. She clutched my jacket, her small fingers trembling as she whispered, "What do we do now?" Her voice was barely audible, but I could hear the desperation in it. "We wait," I said, my voice low and steady. "We wait until they pass, then we get out of here." The girl nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She was scared. She had every right to be. Whoever was chasing us was dangerous, and they wouldn't stop until they found us. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped. I held my breath, listening. I could hear the sound of voices now, muffled but unmistakable. "They have to be close," I muttered to myself. I peered through the gaps in the crates, trying to get a glimpse of what was going on outside. I saw shadows moving past the windows, menacing figures walking toward the entrance. I tensed, my hand instinctively going to the handle of the knife hidden in my jacket. If it came down to it, I wasn't going to hesitate. I had to protect her. But as the footsteps grew closer, I heard something else, an engine. The sound of a car pulling up, the tires screeching as it came to a halt outside. My blood ran cold. This wasn't good. They were already here, and they were closing in fast. We need to move, I whispered urgently to the girl. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. I could see she was scared, but I couldn't let that stop us. I grabbed her hand and pulled her to her feet, motioning for her to follow me. We moved as quietly as we could, staying close to the walls, hiding in the shadows. I could hear the voices of the men outside, their words too muffled to make out, but their tone was unmistakable. They were getting closer, and we had no time to waste. We had to get out of here. I moved quickly, pushing open a rusted door at the back of the warehouse. It creaked loudly, but I didn't care. We had to take the chance. I pushed the girl through first, then followed closely behind. The cold air hit me immediately, and I felt a sharp sting as the wind cut through my jacket. But there was no time to think about it. We ran through the alleyway, my eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the narrow path. We had to get out of sight, and we had to do it fast. As we turned the corner, I heard the sound of footsteps again, this time much closer. They were right behind us. I cursed under my breath, picking up the pace. "Keep up," I said, glancing over my shoulder. The girl was struggling to keep up, but I couldn't slow down. If I did, we'd be caught. We turned another corner, and I saw it. The street ahead was empty, the coast clear. "We're almost there," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But my heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on me. I wasn't sure if we were going to make it out alive, but I had to try. We reached the end of the alley, and I saw the faint glow of headlights coming down the street. The car was getting closer. I could feel my body tense, my muscles coiled like a spring, ready to move. I didn't know how much longer I could keep running. I glanced at the girl, her face pale and streaked with tears. She was scared, but she was trying to be brave. I had to be strong for her. We were in this together now. I could hear the car's engine getting louder, and I knew we didn't have much time. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. There was no time for a call, but I quickly sent a message to a friend in the city, someone I trusted. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. The message was simple: "We're in trouble. Need help. Meet us at the pier." I hit send, then slipped the phone back into my pocket. I turned to the girl, pulling her close. "We have one shot at this," I said. "Stay close to me, and don't look back." I could hear the car now, just around the corner. They were almost here. I had no more time to think. I grabbed her hand, running toward the pier. The sound of the car grew louder, but we were almost there. I could see the lights of the pier ahead, the docks stretching out into the dark water. The car was right behind us now, and I knew we were about to make our move. I could hear the engine revving, the screech of tires as they tried to catch up, but we were faster. We were going to make it. I turned the corner, and there it was, the boat waiting at the end of the pier, just like I had planned. We were almost safe. The girl's grip on my hand tightened as we ran toward it. We were going to get out of here, and no one was going to stop us. Not tonight. I could feel the tension building in the air as we sprinted toward the pier. My boots slapped against the wet wood of the dock, the sound echoing into the night. The girl's breath was shallow against my back, her hands gripping me tightly as we ran. The headlights of the car behind us pierced through the darkness, drawing closer, and I knew they weren't far off. I had to get us on that boat fast. The wind howled through the pier, and I could hear the soft lapping of the water below, but all I could focus on was getting us to safety. I didn't know how much longer we could keep running. We reached the edge of the dock, and I spotted the boat, anchored just ahead, ready for us. The guy who was supposed to meet us had better be there, or we were in real trouble. I could hear the car's engine roaring, a reminder that whoever was after us wasn't going to let us slip away easily. The girl's grip tightened on my jacket as I pulled her closer. "Almost there," I muttered, my voice low and steady, even though I could feel the panic rising in my chest. We reached the boat, and I quickly helped her climb aboard. I didn't waste any time, jumping in after her and starting the engine with a flick of the wrist. The roar of the engine drowned out the sound of the car behind us, but I knew we didn't have much time. I could still hear the screech of tires and the sound of shouting. They were coming. The girl looked at me, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. Are we going to be okay? She asked, her voice trembling. I looked at her, trying to offer reassurance, even though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. We'll be fine, I said, my hands tightening around the throttle. The boat lurched forward, cutting through the water as we raced away from the pier, heading out into the open water. The lights of the city faded behind us, but the sound of the car's engine still lingered in the back of my mind. I wasn't sure how much time we had, but I knew I had to keep moving. We couldn't let them catch us. I glanced over at the girl. She was staring out at the water, her face drawn with fear. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay, but I couldn't make that promise. I didn't know if it was going to be okay. All I knew was that I wasn't going to let anyone hurt her again. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The wind whipped through my hair, and the boat's engine hummed beneath us as we cut through the water. We had made it this far, but the road ahead was still uncertain. The girl was still silent beside me, and I could tell she was scared, but she was trying to stay calm. I glanced back at the city, the lights now a distant glow on the horizon. I could still hear the sound of the engine chasing us, but it was fainter now, a fading echo in the distance. It wasn't over yet, but we were getting further away. My mind raced with thoughts of what we'd do next. I had no plan beyond getting us out of that warehouse and onto this boat. I had no idea who was chasing us, or why they were after her. But I knew they were dangerous. They had to be. They wouldn't have come this far unless they were. I glanced at the girl again, trying to gauge how she was holding up. Her face was still pale, but she wasn't crying anymore. Her eyes were wide, though, and I could see the uncertainty in them. She had been through too much, and I could only imagine the things she had seen. Do you have anyone? I asked, my voice gentle. She looked at me, her lips trembling slightly. No, she whispered, shaking her head. They took me. I don't know where my parents are. My heart sank. It wasn't just the fact that she was alone, but the fact that she didn't even know where her family was. Whoever had taken her had destroyed everything. I had to keep her safe. I had no idea what was coming, but I couldn't stop now. I couldn't fail her. I pushed the throttle down further, the boat picking up speed as we cut across the water. The city was now just a faint outline behind us, and I could feel the tension start to ease, just a little. But I knew we couldn't stop yet. There was still danger, still a long road ahead. The girl let out a small sigh beside me, and I glanced over at her. She was looking at me, her eyes filled with both gratitude and fear. Thank you, she said softly. I nodded, my jaw tight. You don't need to thank me. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you again. The words felt heavy in my mouth, and I wasn't sure if I believed them myself. But I had to keep going. We had to keep moving. As we sailed through the dark water, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whoever had been chasing us would stop at nothing to find us. And when they did, I had no idea what would happen next. But I knew one thing. I wouldn't let them take her again. Not if I had anything to say about it. I could feel the chill in the air as the boat glided through the water, the sound of the engine cutting through the stillness of the night. The girl was sitting silently beside me, her hands clutching the sides of the boat as she stared out at the dark horizon. The city lights were barely visible now, a distant memory, and all that surrounded us was the endless expanse of water. I tried to focus on the task at hand, but my mind kept drifting back to what had happened, what had brought us here. Whoever was chasing us was still out there. I could feel their presence, like a shadow lurking just beyond our reach. We weren't safe yet. I glanced over at the girl, her face pale in the dim light of the boat. She hadn't said much since we left the city, and I could tell she was still in shock. It wasn't surprising. She had been through more than any kid should have to endure. She looked like she was carrying the weight of the world on her small shoulders. Are you okay? I asked, trying to break the silence. She didn't look at me at first, but then her eyes slowly turned toward me, a flicker of uncertainty in them. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know what's happening. I nodded, my jaw tightening. I didn't have all the answers either. But I did know one thing. I wasn't going to let anyone take her again. You're safe now, I said, trying to offer her some comfort, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. We'll figure this out. I won't let them hurt you. She didn't answer, but I saw her shoulders relax slightly, just enough to show that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe me. I turned my attention back to the water, my eyes scanning the surroundings. I had to keep focused. We weren't out of danger yet. I had no idea where we were going or what I was supposed to do next, but I knew we couldn't stay in the open water for long. There was no telling who was looking for us or what kind of trouble we were about to walk into. The boat rocked gently, and I adjusted the throttle, picking up speed. I needed to get us off the water and into someplace safe. My mind raced as I tried to think of options. I couldn't take her back to my place, not with people looking for her, and I wasn't sure I could trust anyone else in my circle, not with a kid involved. But I had to figure something out. The girl stirred beside me, shifting uncomfortably. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice small. I hesitated. I didn't have a good answer. "We're going somewhere safe," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I just need to get us there." I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, but she didn't press further. I had a feeling she was used to uncertainty, used to the feeling of not knowing what was coming next. But that didn't mean I liked it. I didn't like not having a plan. As the boat cut through the water, I kept my focus on the horizon, my grip tight on the steering wheel. The sound of the engine was the only thing I could hear now, the low hum of the motor blending with the soft splash of the water against the hull. For a moment, it felt like we were the only two people left in the world, just me and her, adrift in the dark. But that moment didn't last long. I heard something behind us, tires screeching, followed by the unmistakable sound of an engine revving. My heart skipped a beat. They were still following us. I cursed under my breath and pushed the throttle harder, the boat speeding up as we raced across the water. The girl clutched onto me, her small fingers digging into my jacket as the wind whipped through her hair. I didn't look back. I couldn't afford to. I just had to get us out of this mess. We were almost there. I could see the lights of a small marina in the distance, a place I knew well. If we could get there, I could figure out what to do next. I could get us somewhere safe. But the car behind us wasn't giving up. The sound of the engine grew louder as they closed the gap. I glanced at the girl, her face etched with fear. "Hold on tight," I told her, my voice sharp. I pushed the boat harder, the engine roaring as we cut across the water at full speed. The marina was just ahead, but the car was closing in. They were almost on top of us. "We need to lose them," I muttered to myself. But there was nowhere to hide, no way to shake them off the water. The lights of the marina grew closer, but so did the sound of the car behind us. I could see the headlights now, glaring through the mist, getting closer by the second. This wasn't going to be easy. My mind raced. I needed a plan, but I didn't have one. Not yet. But I couldn't stop now. We were so close to safety. The boat shot forward, and I could feel the girl's grip tighten on me. The tension in the air was thick, and I knew we were running out of time. But I wasn't going to let them catch us. I wasn't going to let them hurt her. Not again. I could hear the sound of the engine roaring behind us, the headlights of the car closing in fast, but I didn't dare look back. We were almost there, just a few hundred yards from the marina, but that wasn't enough. The water was cold, the wind biting against my face as I pushed the boat harder, faster. I could feel the girl gripping me tightly, her small fingers digging into my jacket, but I didn't dare slow down. I wasn't going to let them catch us. Not now. Not after everything we had been through. The girl's breath was shallow against my back, her body pressed up against mine as the boat sliced through the water, the sound of the engine a constant roar in my ears. We were almost there. The lights of the marina flickered in the distance, barely visible through the rain and mist. It felt like an eternity, but I knew we were running out of time. The car behind us was gaining, and I could hear the tires screeching as they took a sharp turn, following us down the narrow waterway. I gritted my teeth, my hands tight on the throttle. There had to be a way out of this, but I couldn't see it yet. My mind raced, but it felt like time was slipping through my fingers. I couldn't stop now, not when we were so close. I glanced at the girl again, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. "We're almost there," I said, though my own voice didn't sound as confident as I wanted it to. She nodded, but her fear was clear. She didn't know what was coming, but I could see it in her eyes. She was still a child. This wasn't a life she should have had to live. She should have been safe, playing with friends, not running for her life. I pushed the boat even harder, the engine screaming as we neared the marina. The distant lights of the dock were now much closer, and I could feel the hope building inside me. We could make it. We had to. As we approached the docks, I could see movement on the shore. Someone was there, waiting for us. It had to be the contact I had called earlier. I had no idea who they were or how they could help, But right now, they were our only chance. But just as I thought we were safe, I heard it. Another screeching of tires, closer now. I dared a quick glance behind us. The car was nearly on top of us. They were gaining. I pushed the throttle even harder, the boat speeding up as we reached the edge of the dock. The car's headlights were blinding now, their figures rushing toward us. The girl gasped, and I could feel her tense behind me. I knew she was terrified. I was too, but I had to stay focused. I had to make sure we got to the dock. The car was only a few seconds away from catching us. I reached the edge of the pier, cutting the engine just as I saw the person on the shore. A tall man, wearing a heavy coat, stepped forward and waved at us. I steered the boat toward the dock, trying to slow down just enough to make the jump. But the car was so close now, and I wasn't sure if we were going to make it. I jumped out of the boat first, grabbing the girl's hand and pulling her behind me. She stumbled, but I held on tightly. "Come on," I said, my voice urgent. We ran toward the man, who had already started to move toward us, and I could hear the car's tires screeching just behind us. The man reached out, pulling us both into the shadows of the dock. I turned back just in time to see the headlights of the car hit the dock, but the driver slammed on the brakes. They weren't going to get any closer. We were safe, at least for now. The man ushered us into a small, hidden area under the dock, away from the lights and the noise. I couldn't tell if it was a storage area or just a place to hide, but it didn't matter. We needed to be off the water. The girl was breathing heavily, her face still pale, but she was safe, for now. I looked at the man, who was now standing in front of us, his expression hard to read. He looked around, making sure we weren't being followed. "You're lucky you made it here," he said, his voice low. "Those guys aren't playing around." I nodded, trying to catch my breath. "Who are they?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just glanced back toward the water. "You're not out of the woods yet," he said, his eyes narrowing. "But you're safe here for now. We need to keep moving." "Who are they?" I asked again, my voice sharper now. The man finally looked at me, his face grim. "They're not just some random thugs," he said. "They're connected to something bigger. Something dangerous." I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just a random chase. Whoever was after us had ties to something far worse than I could imagine. "You need to stay hidden," the man said, turning toward the girl and me. "There are people in this city who would kill to get their hands on you." The girl looked up at him, fear still evident in her eyes. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man looked at her, his face softening just slightly. "We get you out of here," he said. "You're safe for now, but we're not stopping." I nodded, my mind racing. This was just the beginning, and I had no idea what was coming next. But I was ready to do whatever it took to protect her. We had come this far, and I wasn't about to stop now. I could feel the cold air biting through my jacket as we crouched in the shadows beneath the dock. The man who had helped us, he hadn't said much since we'd arrived, but he was keeping an eye on everything. His presence was reassuring, but the questions were starting to pile up in my mind. Who was he? Why had he helped us? And most importantly, who was after us and why? I glanced at the girl, sitting next to me on the ground, her arms wrapped around herself as she shivered from the cold. She looked exhausted, and the terror from earlier was still fresh in her eyes. I couldn't blame her. No one should ever have to go through what she had. I wasn't sure how much time had passed, but the silence in the air was suffocating. Finally, I broke it. "We need to get out of here," I said in a low voice. The man didn't respond at first, just scanning the area as though waiting for something. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted from one shadow to the next. He was worried, just like me. After a moment, he spoke. "They'll be looking for you," he said, his voice gravelly. "You've made a lot of noise, and they don't take kindly to people slipping away." "Who are they?" I asked, my voice tight. The man's eyes flickered toward me, then back to the shadows. "I can't say too much," he muttered. "But they're not just some street-level gang. You're in deeper than you think." That hit me like a punch to the gut. I had no idea what kind of trouble we were really in, but if it was bigger than just some random thugs chasing a girl, that made it worse. Much worse. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice urgent. The man didn't answer immediately. He stood up and paced a few steps, his boots echoing softly on the wooden dock. Finally, he turned to face us. "You need to trust me. I'm going to get you out of here, but you can't ask questions right now. Just follow my lead, and stay quiet." He stepped closer to us, his eyes locking onto mine. "I'll take you to a safe house. There, We can figure out what to do next. But right now, you need to stay hidden." The girl looked up at him, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Will they come after me?" she whispered. The man's expression softened just a little, but there was no hiding the seriousness in his voice. "Yes," he said simply. "But we'll make sure they don't get to you." He paused, looking at both of us. "Let's move." We didn't have much time. I grabbed the girl's hand and helped her to her feet, my heart pounding in my chest. The man led the way, moving silently through the shadows, his every step calculated. I stayed close to the girl, my hand on her shoulder, guiding her along. I couldn't let my guard down. I couldn't afford to. We made our way to the edge of the dock, where the man signaled for us to stop. He looked around cautiously, making sure no one had followed us. Then, he motioned for us to climb into an old van parked at the far end of the lot, hidden from view. "Get in. Now," he ordered. I didn't hesitate. I helped the girl climb into the back, then jumped in myself, slamming the door behind me. The man climbed into the front seat and started the engine. The van rumbled to life, and we drove off into the night. The city lights faded behind us, the darkness swallowing us whole. The girl didn't say a word, just sat silently, clutching her knees to her chest. I couldn't blame her. I didn't have anything to say either. There was too much to process, too many questions without answers. After a while, the man spoke. "We're going to the outskirts of town," he said. "There's a place out there. It's safe." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. I just nodded, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. As we drove further into the night, the weight of everything that had happened settled heavily on my shoulders. I didn't know how we had gotten into this mess, or who was really pulling the strings behind it all. But one thing was for sure, I wasn't going to let them hurt her again. Whatever it took, I was going to protect her. The van bounced over the uneven road, the sound of the tires against the gravel filling the silence. I looked over at the girl again, her face still pale, but her eyes were less wide with fear now. She wasn't as terrified as before. Maybe it was because she felt the slightest bit of safety with the man's presence. I didn't know for sure, but I wasn't about to let my guard down. We had to keep moving. The man kept his eyes on the road, but I could see his jaw tighten every now and then, like he was worried about something. I could feel the tension in the air, but I had no idea what he was really thinking. We couldn't stay in the dark forever. Eventually, we had to face whatever was waiting for us. When we reached the outskirts of the city, the man made a sharp turn down a narrow dirt road. We bumped along the path for a few minutes before we reached a small house, surrounded by trees and overgrown grass. It looked abandoned, like something you'd see on a deserted country road. He parked the van behind the house, then turned to us. "This is it," he said. "Stay here and stay quiet." The girl looked at him, then at me. "Are we safe here?" she asked. I wasn't sure, but I knew we had to take the risk. "For now," I said. "We'll be safe for now." The man got out and disappeared into the shadows, leaving us alone in the van. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. We weren't safe yet. Not completely, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I could see a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could make it through this after all. I could hear the wind howling outside, the night air colder than ever, as I sat in the dimly lit room of the old house. The girl was on the couch beside me, her eyes still wide, her face pale from the terror she'd endured. The man who had helped us had left for a moment, his silhouette disappearing into the shadows. I didn't know where he was going or what he was doing, but I knew he was our only chance at survival. The girl didn't say anything. She just sat there, clutching her knees to her chest, staring at nothing in particular. I knew she was scared, maybe even more so now that we were alone. The world had become a dangerous place for her, and no matter how much I wanted to protect her, there were too many unknowns. I wasn't even sure who we were running from anymore. The man had told us we were up against something bigger, but that didn't make me feel any better. I rubbed my face, trying to clear my head, but the thoughts kept coming. Whoever they were, they had resources. They were organized, and they wouldn't stop until they found us. My mind raced, thinking of all the possible places we could hide, all the things we could do. I had no plan, just a sense of urgency and a promise to protect this girl. A promise I didn't know how I was going to keep. I glanced at her, feeling a pang of guilt. She didn't deserve any of this. No child should have to go through what she had, running for her life, unsure of where she belonged. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her parents. Had they been taken too? Or Or were they still out there, searching for her? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door creaking open. The man stepped back inside, his face serious, his movements deliberate. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice low. I stood up immediately, my body tense. "What's going on?" I asked. "Someone's coming," he said, glancing over at the girl. "They found us." My heart dropped. I didn't know who they were, but I knew they weren't friendly. I turned to the girl, who was now looking up at me, her eyes wide with fear. "We have to go," I said, my voice firm. The girl nodded, scrambling to her feet. I reached out, pulling her close to me. "Stay behind me. Don't let go of my hand." The man didn't waste any time. He motioned for us to follow him, and we moved quickly, stepping out of the room and into the hallway. The house creaked under our weight as we moved toward the back door. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but I knew we couldn't stay here. We had to keep moving. The man led us through the house, making sure every door was locked, every window was shut tight. But I could feel the pressure mounting with every passing second. We weren't safe here. I could hear the faint sound of a car engine outside, the unmistakable hum of an approaching vehicle. They were getting closer. I could feel the tension in my chest tighten as I followed the man down the narrow hallway. He reached a door at the end and turned the handle slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. It wasn't much, but it was a place to hide for now. The man ushered us inside and shut the door behind us, his movements swift and purposeful. "Stay here," he said, his voice urgent. "Don't make a sound. I'll be back soon." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't like the idea of being left alone, especially not with everything that was happening, but I trusted him. He had already helped us more than I could ever thank him for. The girl sat down on the floor, her body curled into itself as she hugged her knees. She didn't speak, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I sat down beside her, my eyes scanning the room, waiting for the man to return. The minutes felt like hours. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were closing in on us, that any moment now, we would be found. My thoughts kept racing. What if they already knew we were here? What if the man had led us into a trap? I tried to push the thoughts aside, but they wouldn't go away. The sound of footsteps echoed outside the door, and my heart leapt into my throat. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped just outside. My blood ran cold. Had they found us? The silence stretched on, and then I heard the man's voice, low but urgent. "Stay quiet," he whispered, his voice barely audible. He was back. I let out the breath I had been holding. I turned to the girl, her eyes wide, her body tense. "It's okay," I whispered, trying to reassure her. "We're still safe. Stay with me." I stood up, moving toward the door. The man had returned, and I needed to know what was going on. I opened the door just a crack and peered outside. The man was standing there, looking at me, his expression grave. "We have to go now," he said, his voice low. "They're getting closer. We can't stay here anymore." My heart raced, but I nodded. We had no choice. We had to leave. The girl stood up, her small hand reaching for mine. I took it, squeezing it tightly. This wasn't over. But we were still alive. For now, that had to be enough. I could feel the tension in the air as we stepped out of the small room and into the cold night. The man moved quickly, his steps deliberate and silent, as if he had done this countless times before. The girl was close behind me, her small hand gripping mine tightly. She was trying to keep up, but I could see the exhaustion in her face, the fear that still hadn't left her eyes. I glanced at the man, trying to gauge if he knew where he was taking us, or if he was just as lost as I was in this mess. We made our way out of the house and into the shadows of the surrounding trees. The sound of the night was all around us, crickets chirping, the rustle of leaves in the wind, but I knew. Better than to think we were safe. We weren't. Not yet. "Stay close," the man muttered, his voice barely a whisper. We moved deeper into the woods, the path narrow and uneven. I could feel the branches of trees scraping against my skin, the underbrush crunching underfoot. My mind was racing with questions. Who were these people chasing us? What did they want with the girl? And most importantly, why did they want her so badly? I kept my hand firmly on hers, not wanting to let go. I couldn't let anything happen to her. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice just above a whisper. The man didn't answer right away, his eyes scanning the area ahead of us. I could see the strain in his face, the exhaustion too, but he kept moving. "We're almost there," he said finally. Just a little further. His words didn't bring much comfort. I had no idea where there was. All I knew was that we had to keep going, had to keep moving. We couldn't stop, not now. The girl stumbled beside me, and I caught her just in time. You okay? I asked, crouching down beside her. She nodded, but I could see the tear tracks still visible on her face, the pain behind her eyes. I'm scared, she whispered, her voice shaking. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? She had every right to be scared. I couldn't even promise her things would be okay, because I wasn't sure if they would be. But I could promise this. I wasn't going to stop until I got her to safety. I wasn't going to fail her. I helped her to her feet, and we kept moving. The man was ahead of us now, leading the way, but I could hear the sound of footsteps behind us, too many footsteps. I couldn't tell if they were getting closer, or if it was just my mind playing tricks on me. The fear was eating at me, gnawing away at my resolve. I had to keep it together for her. I turned to the girl, trying to offer her a reassuring smile. Stay close to me, I said. We're almost there. She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She didn't believe me. I didn't blame her. I didn't believe it either. The man stopped, suddenly, turning around to face us. We're here, he said, his voice low and urgent. Had to stay ahead of them. We had to stay one step ahead, or it would all be over. The road ahead was dark, but there was a light at the end of it, a glimmer of hope. I didn't know what was waiting for us, but I wasn't going to let this girl down. Not after everything she had been through. She deserved a chance at a better life. A life where she didn't have to run. A life where she didn't have to fear for her safety. I wasn't going to stop until I gave that to her. I could feel the weight of the night pressing in around us as we continued down the desolate road, the truck's headlights cutting through the dark like a blade. The girl had fallen silent again, her eyes glued to the window as the landscape passed by in a blur of shadows and faint streetlights. I couldn't blame her for being quiet. She had been through more in one day than anyone should ever have to face. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was exhausted, and so was I. The man driving didn't say a word, his focus unwavering on the road. I could tell he had been through a lot himself, but I couldn't help feeling like we were all just playing by ear, hoping for the best, but not really knowing what was coming next. The truck bounced over the uneven road, each bump reminding me that we were still in danger, that nothing was guaranteed. My mind kept drifting back to the chase, to the headlights that had followed us down that pier, to the sound of tires screeching as they tried to catch us. I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't escaped them yet. I turned to the girl, her face barely visible in the dim light. Are you okay? I asked, my voice softer this time, trying to break the silence. She didn't respond at first, just staring out the window, her fingers playing with the fabric of her sleeve. But then, after what felt like an eternity, she whispered, Where are we going? The question was simple, but it hit me hard. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know where we were going. The man had promised safety, but I wasn't sure if that was even possible anymore. I had promised to protect her, but now, with every mile we drove, I was starting to wonder if I was really keeping that promise. We're going to be okay, I said, even though I wasn't sure if I believed it. I reached over and placed my hand on hers, trying to offer some reassurance. She looked at me then, her eyes filled with doubt. I don't feel okay, she whispered. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't give her false hope, not when I didn't know what would happen next. I just squeezed her hand, trying to convey that I wasn't going to leave her side, no matter what. The truck kept moving, the sound of the engine humming in the background. I could feel the tension building in my chest, my mind racing through possibilities, trying to figure out what we were going to do next. We needed a plan. We couldn't just keep running forever. The city was far behind us now, but that didn't mean we were safe. I glanced at the man again, his face set in a grim expression. How much longer? I asked, breaking the silence. Not much longer, he replied, his voice steady but low. He wasn't offering any comfort, just the bare minimum. He had to know we were on edge. We needed answers. We needed something to hold on to. The truck slowed as we approached a small, isolated building that I hadn't noticed before. The man turned off the headlights as we pulled up to the side of it, parking in the shadows. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. We were here. But what now? Get out, the man said, his voice sharp. I didn't question him. I opened the door and helped the girl out, my eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. The building looked like it had been abandoned for years, the windows boarded up, The door rusted and cracked. It wasn't much, but it was something. "This is it," the man said, motioning for us to follow him. We moved quickly, our footsteps muffled by the gravel beneath our feet. The girl was holding onto my arm again, her grip tight. I didn't blame her. I was just as on edge as she was. We stepped inside the building, the door creaking behind us. The air inside was musty, stale, and the dim light from the single bulb hanging overhead barely illuminated the space. I could see boxes stacked against the walls, old furniture covered in dust. It didn't look like much, but it was better than being out in the open. "This is where we'll stay for now," the man said, his tone flat. He moved deeper into the room, setting down a backpack he had been carrying. I looked around, trying to make sense of our situation. The man seemed to know what he was doing, but I didn't know if I could trust him. I didn't know who he really was or what his role was in all of this. But for the moment, we didn't have much of a choice. I sat down on a crate near the wall, pulling the girl close. She was silent now, her head resting against my shoulder. I could feel her shivering, though I wasn't sure if it was from the cold or from everything that had happened. "What do we do now?" I asked the man. He didn't answer right away, just took a seat across from us, running a hand through his hair. After a long pause, he looked at me. "We wait. We need to make sure no one's following us." His eyes shifted toward the girl, his expression softening just a little. "We'll figure out what to do next. But for now, we need to stay quiet." His words hung in the air, and I realized how much uncertainty was in them. He didn't know what was coming next, either. I looked down at the girl, her eyes closed now, her breathing steady, but her face still tense with fear. We were safe, for the moment, but the danger was still out there. It felt like we were trapped in a never-ending cycle of running and hiding, with no real escape. But as I sat there, holding her close, I knew I couldn't give up. Not when she was still depending on me. We had to stay alive, no matter what. The world outside might have been closing in on us, but as long as we had each other, we still had a chance. I sat there, staring at the dim light above us as the silence stretched on. The air in the old, abandoned building was thick, heavy with the smell of dust and mildew, but more than that. It felt like the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. The girl was curled up beside me, her small body still trembling slightly, though not from the cold. I could feel the tightness in my chest, the feeling that something was about to happen. The man who had helped us earlier was sitting across from me, his eyes narrowed as he kept watch. His calm, collected demeanor didn't fool me. I could see the strain in his posture, the way his jaw clenched now and then, like he was holding back something. It wasn't just the situation. He was hiding something, and I wasn't sure what. The girl, her face buried in her arms, had said nothing for what felt like hours. She hadn't cried again, but I knew that look in her eyes. She was holding it all in, trying to be strong when there was nothing left to be strong for. I didn't know how to fix that, but I wasn't going to let her face it alone. I leaned down and touched her shoulder, gently, just to let her know I was still there. She didn't look up, but she let out a shaky breath and leaned into me. I just stayed there, holding her, not saying anything. The man finally broke the silence, his voice low and steady. "We can't stay here for much longer. They'll be looking for us." His words were simple, but the implication was clear. We couldn't afford to hide forever. The problem was, I had no idea where we could go. The city was too dangerous now. The people after us, whoever they were, weren't going to stop just because we ran into the woods. I wasn't sure what was more terrifying, the fear of being found or the fear of not knowing where to turn next. "What do we do?" I asked, turning to the man. He looked at me, his face unreadable for a moment before he spoke. "I have some contacts. People who can help." His words were cold, practical. I didn't trust him completely, not yet, but he had gotten us this far. "But we can't stay here. I'll take you to them. They'll know what to do." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed him. I wanted to believe him, but even if they could help, how could I be sure we'd be safe? It wasn't just the people after us anymore. There was something else, something more dangerous, lurking in the shadows. The man stood up, his expression shifting as he turned toward the door. "Let's go." We moved fast. No talking. I stood up, pulling the girl to her feet. She didn't argue, but I could feel her unease, her quiet questions. I couldn't answer any of them. All I knew was that we had to move. We couldn't stay in the dark forever. The man led the way, stepping lightly, his eyes darting around the room. He was always alert, always looking for danger. I kept my hand on the girl's arm, making sure she was with me, not letting her get lost in her own thoughts. Every second felt like a lifetime as we moved through the abandoned building. The air felt thicker now, like it was closing in on us. I kept glancing back, half expecting to see the shadow of someone following us, but the building remained silent. There was no sign of anyone else. Yet, we reached the back door of the building, a rusted metal exit that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The man opened it with ease, glancing over his shoulder before stepping outside. I followed closely, leading the girl out into the night. The world outside felt even colder than before, the darkness swallowing us up. The trees were dense here, the faint moonlight barely filtering through the branches. I couldn't hear anything, but I knew that didn't mean we were safe. We had to keep moving. The man led us through the trees, his pace quick and steady, but not so fast that we couldn't keep up. I focused on his back, making sure we didn't fall behind. The girl was still quiet, but she was walking now, her steps more sure. Maybe she was starting to believe that we were going somewhere safe. We didn't speak as we moved through the forest. It was better that way. No noise, no chance of being heard. The night felt alive with every step we took, but there was no time to be afraid. We just had to keep going. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel it crawling up my spine. We were being hunted, but the hunter hadn't shown itself yet. I didn't know how long we would have before they found us. When we reached a clearing, the man stopped and turned to face us. "We'll wait here," he said. "I'll send a signal to my contact. They'll meet us soon." I looked around at the empty clearing, the moonlight casting long shadows on the ground. It didn't feel safe. Nothing felt safe. But there was nothing else we could do. "How long do we wait?" I asked. He glanced at the sky, calculating. "Not long. They'll come." I wasn't sure I believed him, but I didn't have a choice. I sat down on a nearby rock, pulling the girl down beside me. She curled up into a ball again, her head on my shoulder, her breathing steady but shallow. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anything happen to her. Not if I could help it. I sat in the cold clearing, my body tense as I watched the man closely. The girl was still beside me, her small hand gripping mine as though it was the only thing holding her together. I could feel the weight of the night pressing in on us. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows around the clearing, but there was something else. A feeling that we were being watched, even though there was no sign of movement in the darkness. The man had said we would be safe here, but I wasn't convinced. I couldn't afford to be. Every second felt like a countdown. The girl's soft breathing against my shoulder was the only sound, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that we were finally out of harm's way. But the reality kept creeping back in. We weren't safe yet. We still had no idea who was behind this, why they wanted her, or what they would do when they found us. My grip on her hand tightened, and I glanced over at the man. His eyes were scanning the treeline, ever alert. He didn't seem worried, but I knew better than to trust that calm. We had no idea how many people were after us, how deep the threat went. My mind kept spinning with the possibilities. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, and just when I thought I couldn't take it any longer, I heard a rustling sound. It came from the bushes at the far edge of the clearing, so faint I almost thought it was the wind. But then I heard it again, closer this time, a deliberate movement. My heart skipped a beat. I stood up quickly, pulling the girl to her feet with me. The man was already moving, his hand on the handle of a gun that had been hidden under his jacket. His face was tense, his eyes flicking to the shadows. "Stay behind me," he whispered, his voice low but firm. I didn't argue. I kept the girl close, her small body trembling slightly. Whatever was coming, we had to be ready. The man's eyes never left the edge of the trees. And then, through the dark, I saw the first figure step into the clearing. A tall man, dressed in black, his face hidden in shadow. He wasn't alone. A few more figures appeared behind him, emerging from the darkness like ghosts. My pulse quickened, but I stood my ground. The man who had helped us stepped forward. "We've been expecting you," he said coldly. His voice was steady, but I could hear the edge in it. "What do you want with us?" The man in front didn't respond immediately. He took a slow step forward, his eyes scanning us. I felt a chill run down my spine as he locked eyes with me, a smirk forming on his lips. "We want the girl," he said simply. "She's the key to everything. You don't understand what you're dealing with." I stood frozen, my mind racing. What did he mean, the key? My eyes flicked to the girl, who was still clutching my hand. She didn't understand any of this, and I wasn't about to let her be caught up in whatever mess this was. I stepped forward, putting myself between her and the man. You won't touch her, I said, my voice fierce, though my heart was pounding. The man raised an eyebrow, amused. You really think you can stop us? He glanced over his shoulder at his men, who were still standing in the shadows, waiting for a signal. She's not yours to protect. She's ours. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let them take her. The girl needed me. I would do anything to keep her safe. She's not going anywhere with you, I said, my voice steady, but with the determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. The man took another step forward, his face hardening. Then you'll have to make us. And with that, the air shifted. The tension that had been building between us snapped, and I knew then that it was going to come to a fight. The man's men moved closer, but the man who had been helping us didn't flinch. He drew his gun and pointed it at the leader, but his hand was shaking. He was trying to remain calm, but I could see the fear in his eyes. You're making a mistake, the man said, his voice thick with anger. But it was too late. A gunshot rang out, loud in the silence of the night. The sound echoed through the trees, but it wasn't aimed at anyone here. It was a warning shot, meant to send a message. And then everything went wild. Chaos erupted as the figures rushed us. But the man who had been with us was fast. He fired again, forcing the attackers to scatter. I grabbed the girl's hand and yanked her away, pulling her into the trees. Run! I yelled, my voice hoarse. The girl stumbled but didn't stop. She followed me, trusting me, even though I knew she had no reason to. We ran through the trees, dodging branches and rocks, barely keeping our footing. The gunshots still rang out behind us, but we didn't stop. We couldn't. The man who had helped us was behind us now, covering our escape, but I couldn't tell how long he could hold them off. I didn't want to look back. I just had to focus on getting us out of there. We ran for what felt like miles, until we finally reached a small cabin in the distance, hidden by the trees. The door opened as we approached, and a woman stepped out, looking at us with wide eyes. Get inside, she said urgently. We didn't hesitate. We rushed into the cabin, the door slamming shut behind us. The woman locked it quickly and turned to face us. You're safe here. For now. I looked at the girl, who was finally catching her breath, her body still trembling. Are we safe? She asked quietly. I didn't know how to answer, but I could only say one thing. We are for now, but we have to stay hidden. The woman nodded, her face grave. You've got enemies now, and they won't stop. But you're here, and you're alive. That's what matters. We didn't know what came next, but at least we were together, and we had a chance. A small one, but it was enough.